Hello and welcome to the Midnight Confessional. So, in an effort to encourage a more open and honest world, I'm going to publicly confess to you all of the most major mistakes and depravities which I have engaged in my life. This will be fun. It is my sincere hope that my example will encourage those who reflect upon this expression to come to terms with their own mistakes and or find ways to avoid similar things in the future. And frankly, who has time for shame when it's almost 2019 anyways? Perhaps I might even inspire our beloved politicians and prison wardens and things of that nature to engage in a similar discourse in regards to their past regrets. Who can say? That might be a tad unreasonably idealistic. Anyways, where to start? I guess we will start with one that's kind of obvious from the title of this video, which is the fact that I am a shitposting clickbaiter. Now, shitposting is an art and can be a wonderful form of expression, but I unfortunately often half-ass my own shitposts, and then they end up kind of half-baked, and sometimes the humor is lost in some sort of toxicity. I mean, anything shit-related, you gotta put your whole ass into and not bake it. So that's a relatively small sin of mine to kick things off. As far as the clickbaiting, that is a more recent de-evolution of my character, which I mostly only do because I think I'm funnier than I am, and that I just need to trick the evil money-grubbing AI of Giggle Goggles Gag Gang into exposing more mortals to my tricky diction, so that I may forge your soul, entertain you. Frankly, I haven't been an Illuminati insider in like my last 3 incarnations on this planet, so I'm not technically completely lying in the title, but I don't exactly have access to all the same information that I gained during the time of the Crusades. As I have chosen to be born unto regular plebeians rather than the bloodlines, so that I might hone my ability to purify filth and to help sculpt the lumpy muck of earthy fuckery into more expressive and ideal muck sculptures. In the process of unlocking my own purity of intent and idealism, however, I have oft fallen victim to vile perversions, which is why we are here today having an open confessional. Internet, you are my holy ground of open expression upon which I raised myself. You are my priest, and you are my daddy. And unto thee I release my sins, that all my base may belong unto thou. So let's talk about pornography addiction, because, man, do I love obsessively traipsing through the protein-inundated, moldy soul gardens of some desperate, depraved, filthy little sluts, and I think that's one that I have in common with a large percentage of the population these days, too. You know what I'm talking about. Even when they're obviously faking the desperation, it's like there's something cute and endearing about them trying to please the camera when they clearly desire a much harder and more violent fucking than that pussy little bitch boy who's fucking them can even give them without prematurely ejaculating. Now, I know what you're thinking, but watching porn isn't inherently bad. It can actually be a healthy habit to have, which is true, unless you're masturbating to fucked up, disgusting things. There's a time and a place for healthy masturbation, and then there's, the sort of, like, Serbian film or, like, bestiality masturbation, which completely logically validates every single desire you've ever had to kill yourself. Not that I would know anything about that. The weirdest thing I've ever masturbated to is girls getting sucked into quicksand, and that fetish only lasted, like, 9 months or something. Masturbation isn't inherently unhealthy, but addictions are. And another rather pathetic addiction, which I must confess is extremely unhealthy to me, is my addiction to video games. Now this addiction is really bad for me. Like, I just take it too far. It's at the point where, like, I'm aware that the most important thing I can do in life is to figure out how to articulate my expression and to translate my love and my will and my visions for the future and my insights into the possibilities of the human condition into language, so that I can encourage the burning fires of purification and liberation to ignite within others. I'm aware that one of the main goals of all life is to develop a knowledge of self which can identify the desired purity of essence that is the desire of the soul, and to strive towards higher ideals. And I know that encouraging this purity of desire and expression in others is my highest desire. And, I start to write these ideas out, I start to drag them out of my muck, and I get a paragraph and a half into this very paper. And then I spend every moment of my spare time over the next 3 days playing video games instead of engaging in what I know to be actually important. It's a bad addiction, and I do not deserve forgiveness for indulging in it as much as I have. Alright, so let's talk about my fucked up sex life now. So many people are so comfortable talking about their sexualities, and I'm very envious of them, so I'm just going to try it out and see how it works. So my sparsely periodic sexual explorations have consisted almost entirely of horrendously misguided attempts by me to be kind to women who I feel sorry for. And it's always my own fault, and I always know that I'm not attracted to them, but when I sense their desire to be appreciated and to be loved, I feel that I can give them that connection without too much pain on my behalf. And I've learned that I'm quite wrong about that, and that it is always extremely unhealthy to me, and thus my reflection back at them to attempt to share an ecstasy with them without the soul connection which I actually need to have a pure and healthy sexual relationship. So in each of these cases where I've foolishly initiated sexual encounters out of either pity or just, hey, I might as well, it has been disgustingly painful to me and damaged my ability to communicate with them afterwards. So each time, if I truly desired to help them, I ought to have simply done so through a higher degree of communication, even if it was difficult to figure out what I wanted to say at the time. So I confess that I am rather traumatized in that regard, because I have fucked up. Furthermore, the subconscious projections of the boy-girl game amongst normies is itself quite retarded to me. I mean, if you're not willing to communicate with me soul to soul, individual to individual, without assuming weird stuff based on your past trauma or whatever you think about genders, then I probably don't want anything to do with you, because I have no interest in anyone based purely on their physical form. And I'm gonna say this next thing with the full force of straight white male privilege behind it. It is really annoying and tedious to me having to deal with all the traumas and paranoias that half the women on the planet have because they've had to deal with, primitive pieces of shit like molesting them when they were children. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with you animals that you can't control your own pathetic impulses enough to give other souls the dignity and respect of not being molested? Now, I'm probably not, or at least I hope I'm not, going to actually be speaking to anybody who causes these kinds of traumas to their family members, because that's who usually does it. As far as my audience goes, but I just wanted to express that anyways. It's just so inconvenient to me as someone who's trying to just be decent to people and have a common sense of morality. So you just have to help and work around all these traumatized and damaged women with their weird paranoias and insecurities. So if you can't not molest someone because you don't have simple human decency, can you, not molest them because you don't want to inconvenience a fellow privileged human male somewhere down the line who has to piece together the wreckage of the broken person you created? Anyways, that's just some thoughts in that regard. So on to the next confession. Fixing my sexuality is essentially irrelevant because of how bad this next confession is. So I really, I fucked myself up with some somewhat sketchy drugs back in 2012, so, kids, make sure you get your drugs from reliable sources. Also, if your whole plan in life is just to kill yourself, so you really don't give a fuck about whether your drug sources are pure or not, because you're just gonna fucking die soon anyways, you might want to rethink that, because you might end up procrastinating the suicide thing and end up suffering terribly for a very long time, like I am. You see, the center of my skull, approximately where the eyes connect to the brain, has been burning and crackling and popping for 6 years straight now. I mean, I don't know if I can actually even express how horrifying it is. It's, I'm a lot more debilitated than the outward appearance would ever make it seem. Anyways, at the time this occurred, I was hating myself and I wasn't respecting myself, and disregard for my own well-being is the sin that I am confessing. And now at some point I'm going to do a whole another video about how absolutely useless and pathetically misguided the entire medical industrial complex is when confronted with new undiscovered phenomena such as this, which merit at the very least scientific fucking understanding. I might also talk about how shitty and morally backwards it is when confronted with things that we know and have cures for as well. But that's kind of a different topic, and that's for a later time. The moral here is, don't ever fuck with your brain without giving yourself the respect and love you deserve, or you might accidentally bypass all of your barriers and create something the world has never fucking seen before. And you might think the world will be like, oh hey, it's a new thing, let's figure it out. But actually, the medical industrial complex is shamefully retarded when it comes to new things, and you will have to do every single bit of work yourself, because not one of them will lift a finger to help you, but they'll gladly think that you owe them money for the privilege of not doing a single fucking thing for you. You can tell I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm frustrated in this regard. And honestly, my entire experience with every single doctor I've spoken with has been useless, and there's no other way to look at it. So that's pretty much the biggest fuck up of my life, and I'm way more debilitated than it'll ever look like to anyone, because I'm good at wearing masks, I guess. Yeah, anyways. Oh, confessions. Guess I haven't given too many specific fuck-ups. I guess I should confess that when I was in high school, my stepsister took my bicycle one time without asking me, and that made me late for work, so when I got home I uploaded a bunch of gay porn onto her Facebook page. You can read all about that and more in my autobiographical journal thing, Seth Zared Emanuel Underseer's Bible of Babel, version 1.08, Wannabe Wisdom for Weird Wizards. So yeah, that was highly inappropriate and traumatizing for her, and I confess that I shouldn't have done that. I guess a lot of my regrets, which I feel a desire to confess, are also regrets of inaction. For example, one time when I was staying at a friend's apartment, I overheard a case of what sounded like domestic abuse happening in the apartment below me. Now, I don't know if there was actually physical violence, but there was a bit of screaming and some weeping. And every part of me knew that I should go down there and knock and interfere and make sure that the woman was safe and okay, but when I went down the stairs and I stood in front of the door, I couldn't bring myself to knock and interfere. And that is a sin of inaction, for I knew what the right thing to do was, but I hesitated in my own anxiety and couldn't bring myself to do it. Anyways, I guess that's about all I'd like to confess for the time being. Since you stuck around to the end, I'm going to elaborate on a secret of life from a dissociative identity perspective. The secret was that a key to life is identifying your purity of ideal desire and then striving towards that which you love. Now, from a multiple personality perspective, wherein each of your personalities has a different ideal which it wants to pursue, it is your job as the mediator and observer of yourselves to identify each of their desires and then to set a goal for each of them which is in unity with your true will. For example, if you have like a childish inner self, you may say that you wish to express its creativity and its playfulness, but not allow it to distract you with trivial things. If you have a broken heart, you may say that you wish to someday allow yourself to love again, but to learn a greater discernment in what you actually desire in a companion. If you have a sociopathic alter, you may say that you wish to capture some aspects of its humor, but figure out how to tone them down and make them palatable, and kind of deny its right to feed off of pain. And if you have the will of a beast, which tells you that the greatest desire you have is to fuck, well, first of all, you should probably try harder to identify your true will, because if you want to be a dog, you can incarnate as a million different dogs. But if you bothered to be a person, you should have a bit more motivation than merely the whims of your biology. But if that's what an identity of yours communicates to you, you may seek to direct that obsession towards a desire to understand and appreciate the individuality of people rather than their ephemeral beauty. Yeah. I confess that I am oft inadequate at pursuing the lofty ideals I hold in regards to expanding the boundaries of the possibilities of your human experience. But I will continue to try.